in the tiny jewel winked back at him, speaking of 2 billion slaves and a fully industrialized world waiting to serve him. Speaking of more wealth and power than even his grandfather, the great Raycarlu, had known. Speaking of hundreds of mates and tens of thousands of personal retainers to serve his every whim during his long, lazy life. He was chain-sucking, and the eating tendrils at the corners of his mouth writhed without his knowledge, like embattled earthworms. Useless regrets filled his mind. His grandfather should have sold the plantation when Plorn's Tnuktip slaves produced anti-gravity. Plorn could and should have been assassinated in time. Kzanol should have stayed on Thrinton, even if he had to slave it for a living. He should have bought a spare fuser instead of that extra suit, and the deluxe crash couch, and the scent score on the air plant, and, with his last commercial, the sapphire pin. There had been a day when he'd sat clutching a blue-green plastic cord, which would make him a spacecraft owner or a jobless pauper. Bowed white skeletal shapes had raced round and round him, mutated racing Viprin, the fastest animal anywhere in the galaxy. But by the power, Kzanol's was faster than all the rest. If only he'd thrown away that thread. For a time, he relived his life on the vast stage tree plantation where he had become an adult. Kzathit stage logs, with its virtual monopoly on solid fuel takeoff logs, now gone forever. If only he were there now. But Kzathit stage logs had been a spaceport landing field for almost 10 years. He went to the locker and put on his suit. There were 2 suits there, including the spare he'd bought in case one ceased to function. Stupid. If the suit failed, he'd have been dead anyway. He ran a massive, stubby finger around the panic button on his chest. He'd have to use it soon, but not yet. There were things to do first. He wanted the best possible chance of survival. At the brain board, he typed, "Compute a course for any civilized planet. Minimum trip time. Give trip time." The brain purred happily to itself. Sometimes Kzanol thought it was happy, only when it was working hard. He often tried to guess at the emotionless thoughts of the machine. It bothered him that he couldn't read its mind. Sometimes he even worried about his inability to give it orders except through the brain board. Perhaps it was too alien, he thought. Thrinton had never made contact with other than protoplasmic life. While he waited for his answer, he experimentally tried to reach the rescue switch on his back. He hadn't a chance, but that was the least of his worries. When he pushed the panic button, the suit stasis field would go on, and time would cease to flow inside his suit. Only the rescue switch would protrude from the field. It had been placed so that Kzanol's rescuer, not Kzanol, could reach it. Thud, the screen said. No solution. Nonsense. The battery had a tremendous potential. Even after a hyperspace jump, it must still have enough energy to aim the ship at some civilized planet. Why would the brain... Then he understood. The ship had power, probably, to reach several worlds, but not to slow him down to the speed of any known world. Well, that was all right. In his stasis field, Kzanol wouldn't care how hard he hit. He typed, "Do not consider decrease of velocity upon arrival. Plot course for any civilized planet. Minimize trip time." The answer took only a few seconds. Trip time to Otprun, 72 Thrinton years, 100.48 days. Otprun. Well, it didn't matter where he landed. He could hop a ship for Thrinton as soon as they turned off his field generator. Would some other prospector find Raycarlu in 72 years? Probably. Spirit of the power! Hurriedly he typed, "Cancel course to Otprun." Then he sagged back in his chair, appalled at his narrow escape. If he had hit Otprun at more than 9/10 light, he could have killed upward of 1 million people. That was assuming he hit an ocean. The shock wave would knock every flying thing out of the air for 1,000 miles around and scour the land clean, sink islands, tear down buildings half around the world. For a blunder like that, he'd draw death after a year of torture. Torture in the hands of a telepathic, highly scientific society was a horrible thing. Biology students would watch, scribbling furiously, while members of the penalty board carefully traced his nervous system with stimulators. Gradually, his predicament became clear to him.